podcast where we talk about life, legacy, and leadership. Today,
Yes.
I have three very, very special guests. I have, of course, right here. And they are all Percherons.
That's right.
Percherons.
Percherons. Did y'all do that?
Is that
cheer?
your cheer?
No.
What was your cheer?
Percherons, oh me, oh my. Percherons until I die. Tell everybody in the whole wide world she's a Percheron. She's a Oregon girl. Yeah.
Is that what you did?
Yeah, that's what we did.
Okay. Okay.
It's been a minute.
I have no idea.
And you did that, and then y'all did it.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
Ours
so I
is
have
the
three
same.
Percherons here. We have, of course, Olivia, former Pate Ross.
Yay!
We have Maddie Glass, and then we have the Maddie Kate Kendrick. Maddie K Kendrick.
Maddie K. What does the K stand for?
Just my last name, Kendrick.
Okay. It's not Maddie KK.
Not Maddie
I think
No.
I'm adding names too.
Yeah, he's making them.
David loves to just add people's
I will add
names
one,
in
just
there.
not yet.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah,
gift. It's
it'll
a
be-
gift. It's a gift. So, okay, well, I'm excited to have the three of you on the podcast today. Maylee is back. It's a three-peat for Maylee. She is back for year
I get
three, 3 of 4 seasons. Maddie K is back for a second time. Of course, Olivia helps me co-host.
Yes.
But what we're going to talk about today is part 2 of phones and social media. Then we're also going to discuss the book, The Anxious Generation, that was recommended to me by Maylee. So we're excited to get into all of that. Maylee, just for everybody to know, she is a child counselor. Maddie K is a high school teacher, coach, all of the above. And Olivia is recently out of high school a few years ago, which aren't we all just out of
Yeah,
high school a few years ago? We'll just say it like that. Okay, I don't know, Maylee, you want to get it started here? We've been talking about phones and social media. We've had some great discussion. Hopefully, if you haven't listened to the first part 1, go back. Tyler and a couple of our media team just did an excellent job. It was Lizzie and Emerson Ragsdale. And they just really, in fact, Emerson and Lizzie talked about, if we could go to the book, The Anxious Generation, we want to talk a little bit. Let's start a little bit with that, and then we'll get into phones and social media. But both of these girls, their parents held them off, much like the author discussed.
Yeah. So the book was brought to me by my husband, Mitchell. He knows that I am all about all things child and adolescent, especially in the counseling psychology world. And then, too, a lot of those things that I read, I like to send to David. David and I kind of bounce off books off of each other because I know not only are we in the realm of working with children and adolescents, but I believe that you and I have a very similar, if not exact, outlook on childhood, adolescence, and what we believe our missions are very similar in camp and in my practice. Our visions are very much, obviously, the spiritual aspect of it, but a big component is protecting childhood.
Right.
Yeah.
And part of the aspects of protecting childhood are fun, play, being encouraged in those things as well, being taught who they are, and that self-esteem building and confidence building type of activities, those positive experiences. I came and talked to your staff a couple summers ago about our brains and neurologically how positive experiences actually change the neurological pathways in our brain.
Incredible.
And how that's what we're doing at camp. And that's what I do in my practice in terms of, I do therapy, but it's in an outdoor setting. We use horses and we use outdoor activities and walk and farming and things like that. And we allow play in it. And so when I first was introduced to this book, Mitchell thought, hey, you'd love this. And I did. And immediately it resonated with me because it incorporates those exact things that are part of our mission. And so I sent it to David and said, hey, there's some podcasts with the author. His name is Jonathan Haidt. He's a social psychologist in New York, and he's written several books. But this book, he talks about, he really wasn't even setting out to write this book. It just really wrote itself. And I think we all can understand why, because we see it in front of our faces. We see the next generation and how technology has affected them. And so he gathered all the stats and looked at the correlations between mental illness, mental health problems, and the invention of the smartphone and specifically social media. And so you can see timelines, and I won't go into specifics because I know that I might butcher the exact statistics, but he has them all on his website and in his book, and I would recommend going and looking at those. But he has graphs of federal data that show boys and girls, and throughout the years, really starting in 2010, from the beginning of smartphones, forward-facing cameras, so cameras that you can take a picture and see yourself, as well as social media, and the increase of specifically anxiety and depression in girls. And then in boys, it's more of external behavior, such as drug use, suicide, and things like that. So girls, we see more internal psychological problems, eating disorders, anxiety, general anxiety, depression, and and then boys are the external. And so there's a trend that we see, a very stark trend between the introduction of these things and then the mental health crisis that we see in our youth and adolescents. And so as a therapist, and also as a mother, and I'll say that's another perspective I come, that I have teenagers right now. I am on the cusp of millennial and Gen Z. I like to say I'm a Gen Z, but I'm maybe a little bit of both. And so I was raised in that environment without the internet as a child. I had free play. I had unsupervised play. And what Dr. Haidt talks about in this book is a lot more of that. How today's technology, we've got more hovering parents, more supervised scripted play and safe play, as well as more technology being put in their faces from a young age. And so he calls it the great rewiring. That childhood is actually being rewired, that their brains are being developed differently because of technology, specifically social media and the effects. And you can read it in his book, the almost the angst he feels for, hey, this is an epidemic.
Yes.
And why are we not doing something about that? And for me, it's been like a yes, this is what has been already on my heart as a parent and as a therapist. My boys, I've got 3 boys. The oldest 2, one is going into 9th grade, one is going into 8th grade. Okay. They just got phones this summer.
Okay.
And so we on our own, me with the research I'd done on my own and what Mitchell and I had prayed about, really felt like 8th grade was a good start for that. No social media, I say maybe until 18. Jonathan talks about until 16, but we're pretty much set
Lizzie
on.
got it at 17.
17, yeah.
And she is our social media director here and the social media director of her sorority at Alabama.
Amazing. So it has not hindered her in any way.
Has not hindered her in any way.
It's only been a positive
But
for
that's
her
the
now.
excuse.
Yes, right.
Right.
Yeah.
That you need it at 6 so you can be ready to be a social media director.
Wow.
No.
Well, I'll say as a parent, you do feel the pressure.
That's right.
We were the last ones in 8th grade to get one.
Sure.
My oldest son was the last one. And it's hard to talk to other parents because a lot of parents do feel some guilt, maybe for introducing it at a young age. And so my hope is that this podcast would never be that to parents, that it would never be a judgment
That's right.
or something to make people feel bad. Because when we feel guilty about things, a lot of times we don't change or improve on it. And so as a parent, you realize you don't know. You're doing what's best, what you think is best. And every parent loves their child and really is trying to do what's best for them. And sometimes we do things that maybe we realize later on are not really good. After seeing these statistics and you see the increase in mental illness and mental health issues. So for parents that are listening, I hope this is not a conversation of you've done wrong, your children are messed up forever. There's nothing you can do about it. It's no, let's keep teaching, let's keep learning. And if your children do have phones and social media, there's still so much to then go back on and learn and to train our children on. But this book is just, for me, it was this is what I believed, and I'm so glad to see the research supporting that. And as a parent, it's been hard to be the only ones in some ways, but at the same time, we told our kids from the very beginning, you're not like everybody else, so get used to it. You know, you're a glass. This is what you're going to be, and so you're part of our family. We're not going with everybody's doing, and so and my children have already thanked me for that. That my boys have already said, thank you so much. They have no interest in social media at all. They've listened to these podcasts with me about social media. But so the book was just eye-opening, and I knew that you, David, would appreciate that because it goes right along with what camp does in terms of the fun aspect of it. I wouldn't say risky play because camp is very safe, but they're on go-karts, they're riding horses. You know, they're somewhat of like independent.
Well, they're not sitting on a couch.
That's right. That's
so
right.
There's going to be more risk there.
Yes,
They're
that's exactly right.
outside.
They're being outside alone. There are some risks, but I would say independent play in a lot of ways of learning how to get on a horse for themselves and just the benefits and how we need more and more of that and how that's what you're doing at camp. And so I think it went along really well. And so that was a big reason why I recommended it. And to know what we're up against as a school teacher, as, somebody who's dealing with the kids at camp and running a camp, what you're facing. And Jonathan also talks about that attention is different. And I'm sure you guys see that with kids, with a crowd of kids that I think he called it fractioning attention. I can't remember exactly how he phrased it, but they're not able to keep focus because they're flipping from one thing to the next in social media. And so he just lays it all out. And so anybody that is working with children or adolescents or a parent, I would say it's a wonderful read. It's long. If you want to listen to it, it's great to listen to, or even just finding some podcasts or videos with Dr. Haidt on it would be super helpful to give you some direction.
I couldn't stop. I do audio, so I couldn't stop listening to
Right.
it. I
Yeah.
mean, once you recommended it to me, I listened to a podcast with him on it, and then, of course, I devoured the book.
Yeah.
Because the reason I devoured it was because everything he said, I was like, yes, yes, yeah. Like, we're already seeing, and this is where I
Yeah.
want you other two girls to hop in on this. But I so love this. A couple of things I wanted to say, and then I want to get everybody going, was, first off, at the end of the book, a part of his recommendations, you remember what he said? When he said, you know what you need to do? This was a part of his conclusion and his steps. You need to send your kids to a summer camp
Right.
sometime between 3rd grade and 9th grade
Right.
where they don't have access to cell phones. And I'm like, oh, my God. Do you want to just say Brook Hill? Just say Brook Hill.
You
Say
like to
Brook Hill.
write
Say
us,
it,
yeah.
say it,
Right.
say it.
Because he literally is just, and I'm sure that obviously the other camps, that's their sweet spot,
Right,
right? 3rd to
right.
9th grade. But
Yeah.
but when he was saying this, I was like,
Crazy.
go,
Yeah.
yes,
It's
yes.
such a confirmation that you're doing what exactly what needs to be done for these
Absolutely.
kids. These
Well,
generations.
Hetty's, Ecclesiastes, Solomon says there's nothing new under the sun,
Right.
right? And Hetty, this is everything he said. This is why I was really into his book. Everything he said. So he was telling us the problems. I've seen the problems. It's 2020. I've seen the mental health issues, right? Yeah, I've seen the anxiety. I didn't understand it. When it first hit like a wave, like a storm,
Yeah.
I'm going, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm like asking all of you guys,
Yeah.
and y'all are like, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't understand this. Even in all my time in ministry working with young people, it just all of a sudden
Right.
hit us. It was like a tsunami that was
Yes.
working its way from the ocean to land, and all of a sudden it made land, and I wasn't ready for it. I
Yes.
didn't see it coming. And then all his solutions were everything that Hetty talked about. So it's nothing new under the sun. It's
No.
Solomon. The free play, the don't be too safe, and all that kind of stuff. And I want us to dive into that. But you girls, tell us what you have seen. Your friends in high school, you're coaching young people on a daily basis. What have y'all seen?
I'll say for me, I teach 1st through 6th grade is what I taught this past year, PE. So I have like the funnest job ever. I'm literally a camp counselor in my life. And then I also coach 9th grade through 12th grade sports. So I did tennis this past year. And so I kind of got a good range of kids. The biggest thing that I've seen in the young kids, and this like shocked me as a first year teacher, which PE, you don't really have to convince a kid normally to want to do it. Now you have those few outliers that are like, oh, I don't want to do this, but then you can normally get them into it. I mean, that's camp. That's
Absolutely.
encouraging people to be and do what we're doing. But the biggest thing that I have noticed was kids being embarrassed to do things in front of other kids. Now, obviously, I know when you look at like development of kids, like as they get older, when you get to a high school age, that's a normal thing because it's like you want to look good for your peers. But as a younger first grader, you normally don't care. You don't care what you look like in front of your friends. You're just running up and down the gym floor. And that is the biggest thing that I have seen is first, second, and third graders having almost like a panic attack because they're nervous to skip in front of their friends, or they're nervous to learn a new skill and they can't comprehend, like, why can I not do this right now? But scared almost to do it. It's like this fear factor that's been kind of implemented, and it's like, where did that come from? I don't know where it's come from, but like I even see from my years as a counselor at Brook Hill, I started in 2019, and then my last year in cabin was 2021, and then I've been an LC for the past 2 summers, and then on admin this one. But even the way that our campers have changed over years, and things that we've had to implement at camp to combat some of those anxiety issues and depression issues, like we've implemented different areas into our staff to deal with those that we didn't even have to before. And I don't know what that's from, but it to me sounds like it's coming from, the usage of phones, the usage of social media, the access to the news, and to see what people are saying and see what people are doing, especially after COVID and everyone was shut down with their phones and they're all the time just being stimulated constantly, just in their face. It's no critical thinking skills were necessary whenever everything's placed in front of you. It's do you want A or B? And then you don't have to think about why I would want something else. And so that's the biggest thing that I've seen, just across the board, all ages and across the few years teaching.
Definitely like a lack. I love how you said a lack of thinking. Like nobody has to think. You just click and mindless. It's mindless work, And I loved how you were talking about outside and getting people outside, because you have to think about things or building things or being creative.
Right.
I love being creative. It's one of my favorite things is to build things and make things and think about what things could be. But I have a friend, we were recently on a podcast, I don't know when it's coming out, but Lily Rawls, and she was talking about how much social media and everything affected her insecurity. She was insecure. And with that came anxiousness. You know, I'm supposed to, what you see on social media is, and from what I've seen other people and friends and peers and being in high school and all the things, you know, you scroll on social media and you see, okay, wait, that's what I'm supposed to look like. Wait, that's what I'm supposed to say or supposed to be. And that comes with a whole lot of anxiety. Like something that you're supposed to be, geez, like that's heavy stuff. And then you walk into a room and Lily was like, all I did was think everybody's looking at me. What do I look like? What am I? And obviously she talked about how college brought her out so much and the Lord did so much in her life of her freshman year. But she was like, I just wanted to be in people's shadow. Like she was like, there was a part of me that wanted to just hide when I was in social settings, and that makes you not want to go in social settings. And it's like, well, I'll just stay on social media, and then you can fake whatever you look like. You know, I can edit what I look like, or I can be this certain way. You know, people say social media isn't real life, and to a degree, you know, you've got your silly things. I think social media is silly. I use it pretty silly, but just updates, you know, just cute, silly, fun things. And I like to be cute. Don't get me wrong. I use the whole thing, but at the same time, there's something to it.
Is that on me? That's on me. That's my beef fam.
It's okay.
Sorry, Carson.
I was like,
my
there
shoulder.
goes the screen.
Can I do something again?
Turn it back on. You know.
What an odd place for a button.
Yeah, my shoulder. That's my
It's the
beef.
kill switch.
Keep it in the box.
Weird, 'cause it's like a sensor.
Yeah.
Button.
All right. I'm gonna back away. Did I mess it up?
Is that affecting our background? Can it even be seen?
I like this one.
Is it a channel?
Not available.
Yeah, 'cause we're plugged in and we're setting everything. It's all good.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I guess you can't see
I'll
it.
message our main guy to see
Yep.
what happened.
All right. We'll figure
On
it
the
out.
little screen, it just
Keep
looks
going.
like us though. Forgot where I was. Oh yeah, but you can. That was a crazy one. But you can fake where you're at, and you can put on this facade or edit what you see or whatever it is. And so that's just been my personal experience with that.
And I'll say, too, I was just going to say, like, as someone who, I didn't have social media until I think I was like 11 when Instagram came out. And I don't think that my parents really necessarily knew. Like, my parents weren't the type that were like, you can't have a phone. Like, I had a little flip phone when I would go stay at my friend's house. They could call me, but it literally was like, could make phone calls, and that was it. Like, I don't even think I could text on it. But then when social media came out in like 2011 or 12, like, my parents had no clue. Like, they knew what Facebook was, and they were like, no, you can't have a Facebook. Like, Facebook is for older people. But then when like Instagram and Snapchat and all these different ones were coming out, they weren't necessarily scared of it, I think, because they didn't really know what it was. And thankfully, that hasn't negatively impacted me. I think it negatively impacts everyone to some degree, but like drastically hasn't, because I didn't grow up with it for the whole entire time. As a kid, I played outside as well. But I think that is a big thing too with a lot of people my age, is that they've had it for so long. Like my age and younger than me have had it for so long, because it came out so long ago.
And that's one thing he says in the book about it, like your parents. A lot of parents, you feel a little bit hoodwinked.
Yeah.
We didn't know. Your parents didn't know. Many parents had no idea what this was, the effects on it, the long-term effects on it. And that's a big reason why he wrote this book is, hey, we got to wake up.
Yep.
Let's look at the actual data and see what it is doing to our children, and obviously to adults as well, but specifically children, adolescents, teens really is what he does, like 12 through 17, I think. So teenagers, that really those susceptible years, because as parents, we didn't know. But I've heard many interviews with some of those top CEOs of those companies, they don't allow their children to use those devices or to be on social media.
Really?
Heard Steve Jobs talk about that. Heard, just different things where they talk about not even allowing their own children. A lot of their children go to Waldorf schools where there's no technology. There may be a computer room, but that they're, and so it's like, okay, let's wake up. This is a profit machine. It's a profit machine that is influencing our children and adolescents negatively. There's really very little positives. And two, that schools have to wake up. Schools, parents, that we all have to wake up to see what is going on. And he really promotes phone-free schools.
Absolutely.
I think would be amazing, especially for elementary and middle school. And I've brought that up to other parents. and you can see the panic on those parents'
Yeah.
faces.
He talked about that in the
He
book.
does.
Right?
And specifically, I've seen it, and these parents are mostly panicked because they can't have access to their own
Yeah.
children. And so they want to be able to text their children, have access to their children. So there again, that's what he's talking about, that hovering helicopter parent. There's too much supervision,
Yes.
and it's negatively impacting their
Yes.
kids. So their kid can say, hey, I forgot my lunch. Hey, I forgot my shoes. Can you bring me this? And the
Right.
parent is right there, right next to him,
Automatically.
filling their needs every second, and it's actually to the detriment of the child.
Yes.
Do you see that as
Yes.
in the education world?
Absolutely. And it's funny because most of the time, if I had to do a discipline issue with a kid being on their phone or someone like them doing something they weren't supposed to do, most of the time they were
parents are
talking to
mad.
their
Yeah,
parent.
Yeah, and their
They were
parents will
talking to
get
their
mad at you for
parent.
taking
And
the
I
phone,
would be
yeah.
like, but that's our rule. And they're like, but they were texting me.
They're
I'm like,
helping
but
them
it's
break the
still
rules.
Right. And it's like,
I don't think that's good.
do you
It's not.
understand? And that's like, I'm very for as little technology in a school as
Yeah.
possible, because I saw that working in the public school system this year. And I get it, like we've gotten on this trend of trying to make schools more progressive with technology and all of the things, but it's doing the opposite effect.
Well,
of
that's what
we
the data
want it
has
to.
actually shown. There's no benefit.
There's
Children using
no-
iPads and Chromebooks in classrooms, there's no benefit to
No.
it at all. There may be benefits to a smart board or something the teacher
Yes.
uses,
Right.
but having a screen in front of a child's face is actually not doing anything good for them. We're
Yes.
spending, like you said, spending a lot of our education money to have Chromebooks, to have
Yes.
iPads, to have things like that, and our children in their faces all day. And another interesting stat he talks about is that research showed that teenagers, are on their phones 9 hours out of the day.
Wow.
9 hours.
Yep.
Wow.
That's a lot of time. And I'm
Yep.
sure some are more.
Yes.
You know, and I think I've even heard studies where they have kids in the whole classroom turn off their notifications at the end to see how many notifications they're
Wow.
getting notified. I mean, think about the distraction that is,
Yeah.
the anxiety that brings at all levels, all throughout the day. The anxiety. So
Yes.
no wonder anxiety, depression, and a lot of people have kind of come back against this book and said, okay, well, just because there's a trend doesn't mean that's a causality.
Sure.
So it could
I
be
hear
a
that.
coincidence. I've read that as well. A lot of times when I read research, I want to hear all the
Sure.
aspects of it. But what he comes back and says is, well, let's look at suicide. Suicide's not just a self-report. It's a hospital. A child has gone to the hospital, and so that those trends have gone up specifically in boys at the birth of social media and of smartphones. And so that's kind of. It's not just, oh, well, Gen Z is more likely to self-report. They're more with their feelings. They're more likely to talk about it. It's, no, we're seeing physical harm. We're seeing attempts. We're seeing more suicide rates go up as well. So it's not just that. And so I thought that was interesting, a stat as well.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things the book talked about, and this is where he really locked me in. He said kids have two modes, and really we all have two modes. You have discovery mode and you have defense mode. And you know when you're under stress, you go into defense mode.
Yeah.
And he said phones put kids naturally in defense
Wow.
mode
All the time.
because
Wow.
it's inappropriate. It's inappropriate thing. You know, as parents, our job is to appropriately introduce things to kids at the right time to grow them up to then they're ready to be adults. But you obviously don't introduce things to a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old
Right.
that they are not ready to handle. And the bottom line is phones are basically throwing all of it at a kid before they're ready. Well,
Yes.
kids naturally, I think God put in us a natural defense mode. And so kids, what Hetty talked about is through Brooke Hill and how she created it was we're supposed to be in discovery mode. You know, the reason that we had archery is she wanted for kids to discover how to shoot a bow and
Right.
arrow. You know, she wanted kids to discover what a horse was. She thought maybe I can introduce something to a child that is in their giftings that God created, and then they'll take off with it, right? You know, and it could be even things like being a leader with young people here at camp, or it could be crafts or whatever we have here. These are all tools for discovery mode. Well, when kids are in defense mode, they don't go outside and discover. When he started talking about that, I was like, that lines up with camp so
Yeah,
much.
absolutely.
At camp, think about it. There's no phones.
Yeah.
So you're walking around discovering foosball and ping pong
Yeah.
and
Non-stop discovery.
Yes.
nonstop in the fourth grade. Think about a fifth grader without their parent and without a phone. They got $5 and they're going up and they're buying a lemonade shake-up,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
That's discovery
Yes.
for a fifth
Yes.
grader or a fourth grader. I mean, my dad gave me $10.
Yeah.
And he said, now, son, this is going to last the whole week. I was discovering a budget. I didn't know how to do that. I would
Yeah.
always have like $3 left over.
Right.
Now, mind you, this was, 89, 90,
Right.
right?
Inflation
so
was different.
inflation was
Right.
that went a long way.
Yeah,
A lot of beef
crazy.
jerky and snow cones
Right.
I could
Yeah.
buy with that back in the
Wow.
day. But it's amazing what it, and no wonder a kid, they're having to make their bed without mom making their bed. I mean, you think we could
Absolutely.
sit here and name how, how to
Well,
get to your activity
friends.
roll call.
You have to learn to make friends.
Yeah.
I always love when people call and they're like, I'm sending them on their own. What does this look like? Good. Like,
That's
I'm like, that's the
awesome.
best
That's
thing for
perfect.
them.
What will they do?
They'll just have to make friends. Like,
They'll discover.
exactly. And that, I mean, I think grows you beyond, like,
Yeah.
you don't have friends on social media. That's not how it works.
Yep.
You know, like, you can't make true friendships through those things. Like, they're discovering those. And like what you were saying with money, they're learning how to figure that out on their own. I know Georgia is on my team and she's in the merch, and kids will come up and be like, I have this money.
What can I get?
And then their friend comes up and they're like, I have this money. And merch, is very expensive. It's more expensive than
Right.
like a lemonade.
Yeah, it's not like $3.
And
or
so they're
whatever.
like, so what could I buy that backpack? Like, it's pretty expensive. Let me go get one of my friends. And they're like pulling in money. But how good is that for them to be running around camp getting as much money as they
Right.
can?
all of it, even the what you would think maybe like a negative experience is actually not
Yes.
negative. And that he
Yes.
talks about in the book too. That's kind of what he's referring to, a little bit of unsafe play and unsupervised play. Sitting too long in your wet shorts gives you a rash.
Yeah.
Or not hanging up your towel gives
Yep.
a mildew towel. Spending all your money, that those are good things.
Yeah.
And as parents today, we have a harder time letting our children fail
Mm-hmm.
and not have those experiences. And so then you have children that
Yep.
you guys probably see a lot of children who don't know how to handle disappointment, who who at the drop of a hat are
Yes.
so explosive or
Yes.
emotional or shut down
Yes.
because they've not been asked to face difficult things and build up
Yes.
tolerance and build up what they
Yes.
need to be able to face a real
Yep.
world.
You know why that's happening is because they haven't had the opportunity.
Yeah.
See,
Yes.
failure is actually opportunity.
Right.
Yes.
And as parents, I think we think that kids are going to fall apart. No, they have an opportunity to grow.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so kids aren't getting opportunities.
Yes.
That's what they're
Yeah.
missing out on.
It's a prayer of mine. It's a scary prayer. And
No,
I've
I've heard
told
you say
friends,
this. This is
Yeah.
really
I
good.
was
You gotta
about
say
to.
it.
I was about to say
It
the time
is.
that you
Yes.
said that you pray for what's the word? It's not
Suffering.
for suffering.
Safe-
Yes.
I would
Safe
say
suffering.
safe
Safe
suffering.
suffering. Like
At the
things
same
that aren't
time,
gonna like
those
hurt
are- yes.
them.
Yes,
But
like-
like
You're not asking for
I want
leprosy.
them to die. I don't want them to
Yes.
kill anybody else, but like safe disappointment,
Yes.
safe
Yes.
failings.
Yeah.
Because I know in my own life, that's what solidified my relationship with
Absolutely.
Christ.
Yes.
It would help me stand on my own 2 feet in some ways. And so I pray for that. And I've seen it come and happen.
Yep.
And as a parent, I'm like, man, this is tough.
Yes.
But I know what this is going to
Yep,
bring. And I know the good
absolutely.
things that this is going to bring. And so I think that's what
Absolutely.
he's referring to in the book is really that's not unsafe play, like go play with knives, even though I did let my children play with fire and knives.
Right.
And they were outside. We were on a farm, so that's
Yeah.
part of it.
But you did it in
driving
the
farm
right
equipment,
way.
yes.
There's a right way to
Yes.
do all that.
Yes.
You didn't just say, hey, go get on that tractor and drive it.
100%.
You
Right.
taught them how,
They had-
and then they can.
That's
Right.
right. Teach them the right way. But I did have parents. I honestly did. About a year ago, had a parent who knew that I didn't allow our kids to have phones, and she let hers have a phone, and she had read this book about letting their kids have failures. But I was amazed at how she'd missed the phone part. I was like, yes, you're right. We do need to let our kids have more of that kind of play where they're learning. They're
Yeah.
having these experiences like they
Right.
do at camp, but at the same time, taking that technology away because I think they counteract each other. Because you can have that type of play and those interactions and those failures and those good things, but then you've got almost like the phone coming and text, specifically social media coming in and almost counteracting the good
Yep.
things that they're learning in real
Yes.
life. And so I think you've got to. And brain development is different for everybody. That was with our boys. We said 8th grade. Where in 8th grade was different for each of our children.
Right.
One of our boys got it at the end of 8th grade. One of it got it at the beginning of 8th
Right.
grade. So it depends on the child. The brain development is different for every kid. And you as a parent have to understand we should be required to go through some classes about brain development as
Yes.
children, as teachers,
Yes.
as business owners of children's camp, that we should
Yes.
understand that because it makes a difference in how we structure things.
I'm sure there's some
Absolutely.
classes we could have cut out that didn't need
Absolutely.
to do
Yeah.
something that
Yeah.
we didn't need.
Definitely.
Chemistry has not served me well
No.
these days.
No. No. But
Shocker.
he wasn't anti-phone. He was anti-smartphone.
Smartphone. That's exactly right.
And I think we should make sure because I do think some parents would be like, I have to communicate with my kids. And I
Yeah,
don't
I get
disagree
that.
with that. But there are so many. The technology has moved forward.
Yeah.
We have so many options.
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't have to settle for the smartphone. I get it. The peer pressure is tough.
Right.
But as a parent, we got to decide, who's raising the
Yeah.
kids. And I get it. The peer
Yeah.
pressure's tough even on us as parents.
Yeah.
But we got to step up in that. And that's
We-
what he was challenging everybody.
Right.
Absolutely.
And we did a dumb phone. They called it a dumb phone.
There you go.
Where it's just a phone that has no internet access.
I
You know,
love
that they
that.
shared as a family. If they needed to go do something and need to be able to let me know, I understand too. There's a lot more. That's another thing he talks about. This is a little side note, is structuring too much for our children.
Yes.
Too many sports, too many
Wow.
outside
Yes.
activities. They're
Absolutely.
structured all day long. And that was something Mitchell and I were very against.
Yes.
And there are some sacrifices we've had to make because we were like, that's not what we're doing as a family. We're not doing travel, and there's different forms of travel. I don't
Sure.
mean, I'm never bashing anybody that's doing travel sports anyway. They can work for a family. The whole family goes and does it. And I have family friends who that is like their jam, and they all go as a family and they love it. It was not for our family, you know.
That's
It would
it.
have been harder for us, and so it's learning about your family, but learning not to structure your kids' days so much.
Yes.
They're just so busy. That's a lot of stress as well.
Yes.
I love that, Maylee. What is our family called to do?
Yeah.
So, this isn't bad or this isn't, but what is God calling us to do? Because we are intentionally raising our kids. I loved watching Olivia and Eli out there where their grandfather got a bunch of boards, a bunch of hammers, nails, drills, screws, and he said, go build something. And they built a tree house. And I mean, it was a sight.
Yeah, in 2020, the world shut down, and we were like, this is awesome. We just get to go play all the time. And so we all went together and we'd build tree houses and stuff. But I know for a lot of people, my now husband, Ethan, he lived in the city. He had nowhere else to go. And so all he did was play video games. He was on his phone, which we actually did connect a lot because we were able to talk a lot through it, and through a lot of separate things that we won't discuss. There were just a lot of different things, but he just had to be there. You couldn't do anything else but sit in your room and be on your phone. And not to go back to a topic, but when y'all were talking about it puts you in defense, and you talk about, the first thing parents say is people are going to try to traffic you, and they're going to try to, there's people on the phones who are trying to get you, and this isn't really a person. And that is defense mode. You're trying to figure out what's real and what's not real.
Right.
I think in 2020, there were a lot of people who were just trapped. And what else were you going to do? And I think parents too were I've got to get these kids a phone. They've got to have something to do. They've got to have things. And if you couldn't go outside, if you couldn't do anything, we love 2020 because we got to build things and we were just hanging out all the time. And
We had a blast.
we had a great time,
Mitchell wishes for it. I know there were a lot of people that were sick, and I never want to diminish that.
100%.
No.
No.
I'm
At the
talking about
same
the
time,
trapped
yeah.
Not
version.
the sickness
Not
part.
that part, but the
No.
part
Not
of
the
us being
sickness
together.
part.
Mitchell's I would
Yes.
love to have 6 weeks at home with my
Yes.
family
That's
again.
amazing.
We bonded as a family.
Same,
I
yeah.
thought
No
that
doubt.
was probably a huge part for us as a family.
Definitely.
It was huge. But
Definitely.
we also have a ranch, and y'all have a
True.
ranch,
Right.
and we all got to go
It's a
outside
little different,
together.
yes.
I
Yeah.
do
So-
not have a ranch.
You can come to my ranch.
I
I
think
would
y'all got
love to
one
come
now.
to
Your
ranch.
family's got one now, right?
Well,
Sort of?
we
Okay.
have cows.
Okay.
Then you've got
Not
a ranch.
Not
You
a
got
ranch.
some.
We have land.
That's something.
We call that
But
a
yeah.
farm. That's what we got a farm.
We have a plot of land. But yeah, for my family, it was a little different. I thankfully was getting to work the whole time. I worked
Yeah.
for a coffee shop during college for 5
Shadrack's.
years. Shadrack's, yeah,
Shout
shout
out.
out to them. They saved my life during COVID because I had a job the whole
Yeah.
time. And I was out of the house. I mean, obviously college was shut down.
Mhm.
But I actually lived with Neely and her parents for 3 months, which was awesome until weekend
Yeah.
camp, obviously. But I was still working. And so I didn't really ever experience the negative, impacts of the phones and being inside and getting dependent on having that all the time. I've always been the person that I'll lose my phone for 5 hours and I'm like, I have no clue where my phone is. But I genuinely think, obviously, sometimes it's just the person and who that is and how
Absolutely.
nonchalant they are with their phone on day to day. But I never really got hooked on it, never really got super attached to it during that time because I was still working. I was working and then I came to camp. And so it wasn't ever really a thing that was in my mind of, oh, I have to be on my phone, I have to check social media, I have to do all the things. I was in the middle of my job still.
Maddie K, what about your team? What did you see from your high school team? Did you see maybe even a lack of practice, a lack of attention? Did you see people that were pretty into their phones?
Yes, absolutely.
Just kind of give us a little insight into a
Yes.
high school coach here.
Yes. So I coach tennis, which is a sport that kind of coaches itself a lot of the time, and
It's
that,
the
but
greatest sport.
It is it's my
Well.
favorite sport to ever coach. I know nothing about it. I was just there to cheer them on. I was just giving them a pep talk. But what I saw was mostly in practices, they would play their matches and they had this ladder that they would work up and they would play their matches and after they beat whoever it was, they got to kind of chill for a second and immediately every time that anyone was done, it was on the phones, like scrolling until we were telling them, hey, go back out there. And then they would put the phone down and go. I mean, and it was like an instant. And every changeover, every single time they were getting water, every single split second in between anything, it was on the phones. And as a coach who I'm on social media, I'm kind of in that realm, but not to the same degree that they are. I was shocked at how like dependent they were on it. Like it was like if they couldn't find their phone, like on the bus or something, it was like, I can't find my phone. We can't leave until I have my phone. And where me and y'all, I'm sure, are like, I'm just going to the restaurant. Like I don't need it for an hour. I'm fine. And just the codependence is what has been the craziest thing that I've seen.
That is so real. It's almost like it's an addiction or a habit.
Absolutely.
You know, there were 2 years ago, me and Ethan both were like, Snapchat, most ridiculous thing. We were like, why? Does it have anything? No, we deleted it. I haven't had it for 2 years. Greatest decision ever. Ethan recently, the past few months, has been like, it was the first thing I went to. Like the first thing when I wake up in the morning, I click my alarm and then I go on Instagram, just like that. And it's like, okay, so Ethan deleted. The other day I was like, did you see this? And he was like, no, you know, I'm on my fast. But like in a good way. And he's like, don't make me want to go to it.
Different generation.
Yes.
But it's like he's having to teach him as soon as he starts to create a habit with
like
it
unlearning
or
it.
an addiction. He's like, all right, I got to turn
But you
myself
have the
off to that.
maturity and the brain
Right.
structure to be able
No,
to do
it's true.
that.
Kids
you know,
don't.
those
Yeah.
kids don't.
Yeah.
You know,
no,
and
you're
so
so
it's,
right.
It's the big question is in your line of work, in my line of work, where can I fill in the gaps? Because if you feel like you're swimming upstream.
Yeah.
I have felt as a parent, as a therapist, you feel like you're swimming upstream against this big force that it's the biggest force I can think of right now in our world against our children. And so how do we swim upstream? How do we do that? What does that look like in terms of what you guys do differently at camp and what you do differently? And how we each can make an impact in our own realms, because it's something we have to fight. And I loved in the book you talked about, and I'm a little bit further on from this. My youngest I could still do with, but making a pact with a group of parents and saying, hey, let's wait till 8th. Let's wait until 8th grade to have a phone. That way this one child, usually my child, is not the only one without it, you know, and mine didn't get invited to some things. And we were okay with that. But then they would go to different dinners and things. I remember I had one that was ready for me to come get him. I pulled in a little bit early, and he's my social one, and he came right out. And I was thinking, you're usually not the one to come right out. He said, everybody was on their phones at dinner. You know, and so it's as parents, it's our responsibility. If your child has a phone or social media, teach them. Teach them how to take a fast, to realize, okay, this is not going well for me. I don't feel good in my body and in my brain and my spirit. How do I change my habits? How do I do that? You know, as a therapist, it's teaching them the same thing. And maybe you guys can speak to what it looks like to help in your area of expertise as well.
I think for me, like, one of the things that was the most shocking this year, teaching PE, which is the one that it's the rotation they all want to go to. They love to go and run, which there's so many studies, and I'm sure that you've like delved into this a little bit, but like how being active builds brain cells and being active and playing outside. And they've done studies in schools where they give kids more playtime outside. They do better on their test scores because they have more time. And so we think as a society, we need to just have more school time, more homework, more this, more that, when it's actually just more play.
Exactly.
And so
I agree.
And for middle school too. They think
Absolutely.
in middle school they're too big. It should be happening just as much in middle school.
I agree.
Absolutely. And that is where it falls off.
Yes.
And I'm going to get on a PE rant for a second. PE is one of the most overlooked subjects in school because it is education. It is physical education. Kids don't know how to be physically literate. And a lot of times it's because it is a coach or it is someone who has another sport that they are focused on, and PE is just their side hobby, and they're worried about coaching basketball or coaching football or whatever that is. They overlook the education part of what PE is, and they roll out a ball and they tell the kids to go play. And the most discipline issues that I have had this year in my gym were whenever I did a free day or whenever I did a day there was no structure. The days that they're playing, they have a game that they know that they're playing, or that I'm teaching them a unit or whatever it is, nothing wrong with it. Obviously, you have your few days and your few kids who need that structure, but like the discipline issues disappear when they're playing. And what I have found though is that it's harder to entertain kids now than it used to be. Like you used to could just, I mean, for us, like my PE teacher would give me a jump rope and I would jump rope for an hour. And now my kids get bored with it after 15 minutes. And that is where I've brought in my Brook Hill skills, obviously being a camp counselor, is the connection part. And I think that the kids really want to do something if you're connecting with them.
They
also.
still, that connection piece.
Yes.
See, that's the
Yep.
key.
It's huge.
Absolutely.
Because the phone cannot replace
Mm.
connection.
It cannot.
No.
And so they're starving. I think they're more malnourished
Yes.
where
Mhm.
connection is
Yeah.
concerned.
Absolutely.
sure.
So when you're talking about love, when you're talking about peer-to-peer,
Yep.
in-person
Mhm.
relationships, the phone still cannot win over that.
Yep.
Yep.
And so that still wins, and so that is what we're seeing at camp. Is
And then on top of that social media is actually making people more lonely. So I mean,
Yes.
it's like it's just such a deficit
Yeah.
there.
we're
Yes.
less connected.
Mhm.
Yes.
What do you always say to me, Liv? If I'm ever, they're always messing with me. If I'm at the dinner table,
Hang up and hang out.
Hang up and-
You can't hang up and hang out.
It's for adults too.
they
Yes.
love to
Yeah, we're
mess
like,
with me on that.
Bro, hang up and hang out. It's funny.
There's nothing sadder though than when you go into a restaurant and you see a family
Yeah.
sitting there all on
Yeah.
their phones. Like that breaks my heart. It
I've
breaks my heart.
told Ethan, like, when we go on dates, I'm like, phone stays in the car. And he's
Yes,
like, what if
we
there's
do
an
that.
emergency? And I was like, okay, put it under your butt when we're sitting there because it won't be out. Like, everybody, you look around and nobody's talking to
Yep.
each other. Like, and I'm a yapper, so it kind of doesn't help. Like, that I love to talk a lot, but I have to have somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
It's not fun when I'm talking to
That's real.
myself, but
That's real.
it is so true how we have to put it away to
Yeah.
be able to have a face-to-face conversation.
Yep.
But that's a skill.
Yes.
Being able to have a conversation is now a skill.
Yes.
It will now
Come
be
on.
something in
Yes.
jobs that bosses are looking for. Do you have the ability to speak to customers?
That is so
Yeah.
real.
You think about it, sales. I think the salesman. What it's been is the trades.
Mhm.
There's money in the trades. I think now salesmen and leadership and people skills will become the new frontier
Yep.
of supply and demand, where it's in low supply and high demand.
Yes.
You start working on this.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember even in silly things like ordering. I used to, obviously you got mom and dad. They're both going to be opposite, right? Well, Melissa, your mom, would always order for the kids, and it bothered me so much. So when I would take them to eat, I
just
would
look at 'em.
I would order, and then I just look at them. And
I
if they
love
didn't
that.
order anything, they weren't getting anything.
I got to the
love
place where I was
that.
so scared. I was like, all right, what do I get at Subway? And I'd like write down on my list. I'd be like, okay, here's my Subway. I'd ask my mom. I'd be like, what do I get at Subway? And she would tell me what I get. And I had to learn to order it for myself. It was parents sometimes need to tell you, okay, what do you like? Obviously, there's like a certain
Right.
level of that. But then you're so right. After you know what you want, you still have to be able to tell
Yeah.
them what
Yeah.
to
Communicate.
order. Yeah.
And you weren't getting anything from
No,
me.
nothing.
Oh,
Not
you
even
knew.
what I
a phone
like.
call and making an appointment is like
Terrifying.
my least favorite thing on the planet.
David would be like, call and set up your phone. And I'd be like, I literally can't. Like, please just
No,
call
and,
this
like,
man. I don't know what to tell him.
As I'm planning
And I
my
wouldn't
wedding
do it.
right now, like I literally on my way back to camp this morning, I was like calling my wedding venue, and then I called my wedding planner, and then I called my mom, and I called all these people trying to make all these things, and I like finished, and I was like, I'm exhausted. I was like, I had to just talk to so many people, but it's real.
Yeah.
Like, and
Psych yourself
my
up
mom
for
did
even-
everything for me,
yeah.
making
Yeah.
appointments and everything, and I love you, Mom, if you're listening, but I love her, but
Yeah.
like she did it all for me, and so
Yeah.
now that's a fear that I have to
Yeah.
overcome. Is, like,
Yeah.
making an
It's a
appointment.
huge responsibility on the parents to teach their children.
Absolutely.
And like you said, a lot of times parents just didn't know.
Mhm.
And but yet it's not too late to go back and
Right.
say, like I said, I've got two just got phones a month ago. We're doing a lot of learning. I'm reading, and it sounds like I'm an overprotective parent, but if you know me, I'm really not.
Right.
No.
I'm,
No.
like I said, we live on a farm. My kids drive farm equipment their whole
Yeah.
lives. They've played, there's fire. They are outside shooting things, catching things. We're
Yeah.
like living the Wild West a little bit. But when it comes to phones, you better believe I'm
Yeah.
overprotective
That's
because
right.
my
Yeah.
children need to be taught how to even text.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's real.
We don't text a girl you don't actually know. You never met her in real life.
Right.
You don't text a girl that has a
Yep.
boyfriend. You don't text these certain things. I mean, it's like very specific. Not that those are anything my kids have done. Just to say,
Right.
just examples.
etiquette.
Just etiquette, like
Yeah.
phone
Absolutely.
etiquette, spelling
Etiquette.
correctly.
Yeah.
This is how you answer. Call an adult.
Yes.
I've taught mine when you want to talk to one of your friends' parents, they love it when you call them.
Yeah.
They'll call friends' parents, and that parent will call me right back and say, I love that they called me. That meant so much to me.
Mhm.
So it's a step by step of, all right, let's talk about this
Yeah.
text right here. Let's
Right.
talk about
Mhm.
this, how we look at
Wow.
this website, what we do, you at our table, I noticed you had your phone a couple of times. Let's make sure we just
Yeah.
put it away. We're not distracted by it. So it's huge responsibility on
Yeah.
parents now that we know
Wow.
to then teach
Yeah.
and help our children, because if not, there is going
Yeah.
to be, just as we've seen, just an increasing trend in those mental
Right.
mental
I
health
love
issues.
that you're
Right.
teaching them proper communication,
Mhm.
like
Right.
how to do it and the way to go about it. Like it can be. I love how you say anything can be a tool.
Right.
Gun's a tool. A phone's a tool.
And it's
are
here
you
to
using?
stay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And can't demolish them. It's not gonna
Right.
go
Carrier
down.
pigeon.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. But there's a way to go about it,
Right.
and in the right way. And I love
Right.
how you're coaching that.
And I would honestly say you're not being weird about the phone. You're actually putting the phone in the same context as everything else.
Driving.
You didn't
Yes.
say,
Yep.
okay, just here's a car.
100%. I thought
good
the same
luck.
exact thing.
You know, with Olivia and Eli, we started them driving at 5 and 6.
Mhm.
Now we're on a farm,
Mhm.
right? But I think they got a car at like 8 or 9 for $900. We bought a standard truck, and they got to drive it all over the
Mhm.
farm. By the time they took their driving test at 14, because we started at 14 taking the
Mhm.
driving test,
Mhm.
because we wanted to prepare way ahead of time.
Right.
Yeah.
So all that you're saying, Maylee, you're not saying the phone is more. You're putting it in the same. See, Melissa and
Appropriate
I.
category.
That's right.
Yeah.
We didn't know, because I mean, when our kids were there, I mean, you're looking at
Well, I had the flip phone. Loved that thing.
That's
the little
true.
slide up phone.
that's
Loved
true.
that
So
thing.
cool.
But we were kind of going cheap. We weren't being
No,
strategic.
it's
Right.
true. It's true. It ended up
Wasn't
being
on purpose.
It
Yeah.
was not on
Budget.
purpose.
Yeah.
It was so fun. I
yeah.
loved that thing. You slided it up to like do a little texting.
That.
It was awesome. Get
So-
that back.
but we didn't know. We
Right.
knew with the car. We knew with
Mhm.
the chainsaw. We knew with the four-wheeler.
Yeah.
We knew with the firearm and shooting
Things that are
sports and
dangerous.
hunting.
Yeah.
We knew with all these other things. We didn't know with the phone,
Mhm.
right? What I think parents today need
Yeah,
to know.
yeah,
And so
absolutely.
all Maylee's saying is,
Information.
when it came to the tractor, you taught your kid how to use it, and you're doing the same with the phone. I think that's
Right.
all we're saying. Is put it in
Absolutely.
the same
Right.
category.
And I think you in all those things that you named, you see danger. And
Yes.
I think that when they think of phone, they don't think of danger.
That's
But
it.
there is so much
No,
danger,
you're so right.
not only in who you could meet on your phone,
Yeah.
but also in what it could do to you.
Yeah.
And so I think
You know
that's
where
exactly it.
do see danger. Okay, so they talked about the 80s and 90s in the book about how it was the safety. Boy, I'm telling you, when I was growing up, it was all about safety. And I mean, thank God for my dad, because my dad was like, he's all right, go do it. You know, my dad was always throwing me out
Yeah.
there. You know, he's like, he can drive across Houston, he's fine, you know.
Right.
And my mom was like, he's going to get trafficked or whatever. And so he's a man, you know. But anyway, that's what my dad did. But see, we were taught kids can't go outside because they're going to get kidnapped.
Stranger danger.
And what they said, what the author said is, there's actually no one outside anymore.
It's
The
not
strangers
happening.
are always on the phones now.
Wow.
So we're actually handing them the thing that they're
That's
going.
the most
Yeah.
unsafe.
That's the most
Yeah.
unsafe, and
Keeping them from the thing that's actually
Wow.
the best for them,
Yes.
mentally, physically.
Wow.
Yeah.
go outside,
Yeah.
play.
Wow.
And did you touch on this, Maylee? He talked about playing without parents. Maybe we could build on that a little bit. He said, let kids go outside, and then you don't police them.
Yes.
You
Unsupervised. play.
unsupervised play. I thought that was brilliant. They need to come up with the rules. And you know what's going to happen? They're going to argue, right? That's not fair. And what do the parents want to do? We want to launch in and we want to play referee. And he said, don't do it.
Yep.
Because you're not going to be there at their job. At Shadrack's,
Yeah.
right? They
Yep.
weren't there at Shadrack's. When Liv went off to Little Rock Christian her senior year, I wasn't there to play referee in her classes.
It's true. That grew. I attest so much of my growth and just in life, which is why I think college is a good thing. You're getting away. And obviously my experience looked very different and I still was able to get away. But I stayed in an apartment by myself for my senior year.
At times.
At times. They were
Most
on
of the
and off.
times.
On and off. Most of them, but
Unsupervised play.
lots of
Yes.
unsupervised play. But it was
Unsupervised life.
But I was at a very good place. Like you made sure I was in a safe place. Like there's
Yes.
gated, and then to get to the, obviously we didn't know everybody who lived there, but I didn't talk
yeah,
to anyone in the
you
hallways.
lived in a gated community and we ate beans every day. So
Yeah.
you're welcome.
It was awesome for me. It definitely was. I don't say that I'm not. I'm very grateful. I am. But like I had to think on my own, which
That was your college experience.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Like I had to and I grew so much. Like in real life, I had to walk up to the room. Is anybody following me? Am I?
Yeah.
I would always tell you, if someone's following you,
Just
walk
keep-
past your
just
room,
keep
keep
trucking.
going, go down to the
Yep.
to the deal.
Well, I mean, I had a protocol, which nobody ever did. Like, it was a great experience. There
Yeah.
was actually one time Ethan, took it on. He lived within, 15 minutes. And so he would always be like, he would drop me off there, and then
Oh,
I
well,
would go
I threatened
up.
him.
You
I said,
did?
you got to take care of her. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I
was
said, you
fine.
got to take care of her. And so he took it very
He
seriously.
took it way too.
Right.
There were 2 instances this happened. He dropped me off, and he was like, call me when you get into the room. Look at me in my eyes. Call me when the door is locked and you are in there. You call me. Am I understood? He said, I'm the one. If you go missing, it's on me. And I was like, okay, like
I told him
super.
that.
I was like,
Awesome.
that's so much. Oh my gosh. So I got up
That's
there
good,
and I
David.
forgot to call him a little bit. And I'm a bath girl, so I just got right into the bath. And so I'm in the bath. I'm chilling, having the time. It had the greatest tub. Like, I had the greatest time of my life. I hear all of the sudden, and I was like, oh my gosh, someone follow me here. Like, I'm losing my mind. I'm like getting dressed. I'm like ready to like call 911. Like, I walk up and there's a little peek hole, and it's Ethan, and he is pacing back and forth. He's freaking out. And I opened the door and I was like, what's wrong with you? And he was like, you didn't call me. Like, what if you weren't okay? And I was like,
Took it very seriously.
I was fine. And he was like, he like had to take a minute to cool down. But long story short, it grew me so much, and I was able to figure out those moments on my
your
own.
You need all
on
of
your
them. You need
own.
all those experiences.
Absolutely.
My favorite thing was before she did that her senior year. You know, we'd go to a restaurant. She would never say a word. I mean, she could order, obviously, 15, 16 years old. But I remember toward the end of her senior year, she's like, hey, guys, let's go to, what was our favorite place there at the Promenade, the Mexican food place?
Oh, Local Lime. I
Local
love
Lime.
Yes.
Love
Love
it.
local lime.
Local
So
Lime.
good.
It's our jam.
Yeah.
So we walk up to Local Lime. Olivia walks in front of Melissa and I. She said, there will be 4 for Pate. She takes
Whoa.
completely over. And it was the first moment that I looked at Melissa and I go, who's that kid? That's not my daughter anymore.
Grown up.
She grown up.
She grown
She's a
up.
woman.
Wow.
That's
She
awesome.
left a
That's
girl.
awesome.
and
Yeah,
ju-
but you had
you
to
know,
in your
You
you
have
gotta
to.
walk in and say, I'm doing this.
that's
So
what
think
the-
about how many of those experiences the children and adolescents are being deprived of,
Right.
and so are not able to go into the
obviously
workforce.
in a smaller scale.
Of course.
But
But
you're
you have
so
to
right.
see
Yeah.
how important it is
Yeah.
that it changes you,
Absolutely.
and grows you up. You know,
Absolutely.
and we're depriving our teenagers of that.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you see that in hiring staff. Brook Hill's special.
Mm.
That's the only thing. You probably don't see it as much as other workforces do, because you guys get the cream of the crop, and really you have already developed them. That's one thing I think
Right.
about Brook Hill is, even if we didn't grow up in an environment where that was taught, hard work was taught, those life skills were taught, you learn it as a counselor.
Yes.
And so then you've already trained up this great staff. So you
Yes.
guys are kind of special, but I know in a
Yes.
lot of other workforce areas that can be really challenging.
Yeah.
And so I think you're correct. And if we can teach our kids personal skills,
Yeah.
how to look someone in the eye, how to shake someone's hand, how to
Absolutely.
introduce them, it could be small things
Mhm.
go a very long way.
Yeah.
Especially in today's world where that's not seen as much.
Not looking people in the eye. That's one of my pet peeves. Sometimes Ethan, in stressful moments, he'll like be talking to people that he's nervous and he's looking away from them, and I'm like, just look at them. Just look at them in the eye. I mean, it's just one of the things.
I
but
bet he
it's
appreciates
so. Oh, he hates.
I bet he feels really good about it.
He really thanks me when
Like a
I
man.
correct him
Feels very
there.
manly.
That
He's a
was
saint.
he. No, he's not. No, I love that guy, but no, there's so
For some
many
that are maybe more
things.
shy, that
Yeah,
it's a little it's in their nature
absolutely.
just
No,
to be a
you're
little
so
more
right.
shy. Yeah.
That's my selling point for staff.
Yeah.
If
for
you'll
sure.
work for us for like 7
Yeah,
years,
yep.
right? You'll be a JC for 3. You'll be all summer for
Yeah,
4.
Yep.
I promise you, we'll help you be set apart.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
for
No
sure.
doubt about that.
It's an easy selling
Sure.
point
in
because
every
it works.
area of your life.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Every
for
single
sure.
area of your life. It's a training camp unlike any other.
100%.
You don't really realize it until, especially after when you're out in the real world and you're like, oh, not everybody knows how to do this
Right.
or thinks about what needs to be done and just gets it done. You know, I mean, it's just, and the expectations we have for our children are the same. And so what you guys do here is huge in terms of sending people out in the world that know how to work and know how to
For sure.
interact.
Right.
Great husbands, great
Right.
fathers, and it's a great training program.
Right.
For sure.
Well, and that's my fiance's not Brook Hill at all. Like, I mean, he's Brook Hill, but he's
He's
not
pro Brook
he's,
Hill.
He's pro Brook Hill, but he's not a Brook Hill guy. He
Yeah.
didn't go to camp here. He didn't really ever go to church camp or anything ever. But when I'm talking about camp and I'm doing all these things, but it wasn't until he came and he met my friends. First of all, he was at Liv and Ethan's
Mhm.
wedding. He met a bunch of the people there, and then he got to really hang out with my friends. But then he actually got to come this summer, and he got to watch crucifixion. He got to see
wow.
hoedown kind of happen. And when we were leaving that night, he was like, "I get it."
Oh,
He's like, "I
that's
get
cool.
why y'all
cool.
are different and why you're different and why
Yeah.
you stand out. Because he talks about the first time that we went out on our first date. He was like, you were just different than any other girl I've ever talked to just about your ambitions, like just about what you want to do with your life. But it's because of what I've done.
I love that. Yeah, it's just unbelievable what the phone, what social media are doing. That we're just completely out of that.
Yeah, we have to wake up. Parents have to wake up. Employers have to wake up. Anybody that especially is working with children, I encourage to read this book. Like I said, right away, David, working with children and adolescents. A lot of what you do is therapy. I've told you that before. That in camp, a lot of what it's like I'm modeling my practice after camp because it makes a lot of sense. And this research only just solidifies that understanding that. And so the book is also gives you more of a backbone. For me, I'm on the other end of it. I've already made these choices, and I'm like, yeah, all right, woo, okay, we did it right. This is really what God laid on my heart, and I'm so glad we did it, and we went against the grain. And so for any parent out there that is doing the same thing, keep working. For those of you who are listening who children already have phones or have social media, and don't have judgment, it's okay to let's teach our children how to use it appropriately. To teach them there are negativity, there are negative things that can affect them mentally and emotionally. And so how to take fast from it, how to maybe make a choice. It's never too late to stop. And so a lot of parents are thinking, oh, I've already given them the phone. How detrimental it can be. It's like, would you not take that drug out of their hand? Would you not take that alcohol?
Literally, yeah.
Would you not take that out of their hand, knowing what it can do to them until they're ready, mature enough and ready? Same with social media. So I know we've let you have it. Let's either learn how to minimize the amount of time we're on it, or let's just take it out until you're a senior in high school, or whatever that may be. And it depends on the parent and the child. But I think that whether you are a parent who has a young child, iPads and phones, and like you said, specifically smartphones, learning how to teach your children the safe ways to use them, just like driving a car. And with social media, holding off as long as we can so that frontal cortex is developed, our judgment is developed, that maturity is more intact, and so they can make better choices and it won't affect them. As a 41-year-old woman, it can affect me if I let it.
Yeah.
And so why would it not affect a 13-year-old girl
Right.
who's in the prime development stages of her life, identity and figuring out who she is and her body image? I mean, I remember my mother would not let me have 17 magazine. As a 13, 14-year-old girl, I wanted all
I
the
haven't heard that in a long time.
17 magazine.
Oh my
Yes,
gosh,
it was like
that's
teen. There was like a
crazy.
teen bop. I can't remember, but 17 was the one I wanted. And it's the same concept. She understood that me looking at those images would only make me feel bad about myself.
Right.
Make me want to consume more clothes and more things to make myself feel better, want to look like somebody else, to have straight hair like those girls. That was always it. Have straight hair like the girls in the magazines. And so I implemented that in my children. I remember they would be in the grocery store and even turn magazines around, because the cover alone was.
My mom did that all
Did
the
she?
time.
Mine too. I am
so
now
good.
my mother, who now with social media, and every now and then they'll give me a little bit of a hard time, but ultimately now that my oldest ones, it's been a lot of thank yous, and I really have not missed it at all, and I'm so glad, and they're really proud of it. They'll even brag about it. Like my mom didn't let us have it until we were eighth grade, and so it's a worthy sacrifice to make. And now that data is there, and you can see the charts and the graphs, I hope that it'll encourage more parents to wait until eighth grade or longer, or get them a Gab phone. We did a Gab phone. It's a wireless phone with no internet. It even doesn't allow pictures or videos being sent, that sort of thing. And so there are a lot of different options you can use if you feel like your child needs to have communication. That's great. But what that looks like. And then two, going up to our schools and legislating and asking for phone-free zones and phone-free schools. Elementary school and middle school should not have phones.
Nope.
Yeah.
I think
There's
the
no
governor of
reason.
Arkansas has been working on that. I don't know if you knew
Awesome.
that.
I'm live in Texas. So
Okay.
I don't know.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
Halfway.
That's
Just
right.
Barely in Texas.
Well, our
I'll
job,
move over to Arkansas.
our job as parents is not to make our kids happy. It's to prepare them for life.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And so, we can't fall into that pressure. I think there's two, seems like rites of passage today. For me, it was always the car, because I felt like once my kids got their license, they were kind of gone.
Yeah.
And Olivia and I had a little cry moment when she got her license in her car. That's that day, that 16, because I knew she was no longer going to be the Olivia that lived in my home, even though she still lived there, for a couple more
different.
years. It's still different. Same with my son. But I didn't realize that the phone is also that.
Yeah.
And I think this book helps you to understand when's the appropriate age for that.
Right.
And just like I prepared her for years on the cars, you know, I would give myself an A+ on on vehicles,
Right.
but I would give ourselves, you know, probably a C- or a D on phones because we just didn't know.
Didn't know.
Most parents
Yep.
didn't know.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yep.
but now that we do, there's something we can do about it. There's better choices we can make to give our children the best future and best for marriages, because especially young boys are addicted to pornography at
Yep.
younger ages because it is available.
Mhm.
That's what Mitchell, he was just like, why would I give my sons
Mhm.
this
Yep.
drug, this thing that they can have at all times
At
and
their
look at
fingertips.
things at their fingertips?
Yep.
You know, he really didn't want to give it to him in 8th grade.
Sure.
And I kind of was like, I think we got Mitchell, we do need to move on.
Right.
We got, you know,
Sure.
and that's part of it is
It's
that
tough.
it's
Yeah.
part of their
It's tough.
world.
Right.
Yep.
It is a real thing. Social media is part of our world, but what we can do is prepare them for that.
Mhm.
And it should be years, right?
Yeah.
It should
That's
be
right.
those middle school
Yep.
years should be teaching and
Mhm.
coaching and showing. So now that we have the data, we all can be doing better for our kids and for the
Yep.
future.
That's so good. I appreciate you guys being on here. This was a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
Fun.
The
I love it.
Go
Pertrons.
Pertrons!
Pertrons for life.
Right?
Pretty-
If you're a
solid.
Pertron, you're awesome.
That's it. Parents need to request the Pertrons, it looks
Oh
like.
man,
Absolutely.
yes,
First
life changing.
I love it. All right. Life, Legacy, and Leadership, the Brook Hill Podcast. Thank y'all for being on. See y'all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Oh, we get some applause.
Have
a good, Carson. Hold
our link.